The alien ship appeared above Earth on a Tuesday morning, hanging in the sky like a silver crescent moon that had forgotten its proper place. It was beautiful in a way that made people stop and stare, but also terrifying because humanity had never seen anything like it before. Within hours, every government on Earth knew that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Captain Hyun-woo Kim stood on the bridge of the UNSS Determination, Earth's first true deep space vessel, and watched the alien ship through the main view screen. His hands gripped the armrests of his command chair tightly enough that his knuckles turned white. The Determination was humanity's pride, built over 15 years with the combined resources of 30 nations. It had nuclear engines, basic life support for long voyages, and weapons that now seemed laughably primitive. Hyun-woo had always thought his ship was impressive. Now looking at the alien vessel that was easily 10 times larger, he felt like a child playing with toys. The communications officer turned to face him. "Captain, they're hailing us again." Same message, repeating on all frequencies. Hyun-woo nodded slowly. "Put it through." The view screen shifted, and suddenly he was looking at an alien face. The being called itself Ambassador Velthar, and it looked vaguely like an oversized mantis, if a mantis could be elegant and wear what appeared to be flowing robes. Its translator device worked perfectly, turning its clicking sounds into smooth English. "Greetings, Captain Kim of Earth. I represent the Aquilan Empire, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We have been watching your world for some time. You have finally developed the technology to leave your solar system, which means it is time for first contact. We welcome you to the greater galactic community." Hyun-woo forced himself to stay calm. "We appreciate your greeting, Ambassador. What exactly is the Galactic Council?" The alien made a gesture that might have been a smile. "The Council is an alliance of 47 spacefaring species. We maintain peace, regulate trade, and protect younger species from threats they cannot yet face. Your species qualifies for junior membership, which comes with many benefits and protections." That word junior stuck in Hyun-woo's mind like a thorn. He had spent 20 years in Earth's unified space navy, working his way up from ensign to captain. He knew condescension when he heard it, even from an alien. Over the next week, Ambassador Velthar and his team visited Earth. They met with world leaders, toured human cities, and examined Earth's technology. Hyun-woo was assigned to escort them aboard the Determination, showing them what humanity had achieved. The aliens were polite, almost painfully so, but Hyun-woo could see the pity in their eyes. Or whatever they used for eyes. Dr. Jisoo Park, the Determination's chief weapons scientist, gave the aliens a tour of the ship's armory. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, and she took pride in her work. She showed them the nuclear-tipped missiles, the laser-point defense systems, and finally, her personal project, a prototype magnetic acceleration cannon. "We call it a railgun," Jisoo explained, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "It uses electromagnetic force to accelerate a metal projectile to extremely high speeds. In atmosphere, it can punch through 10 meters of reinforced steel. In space, with no air resistance, we calculated could reach velocities that would make it incredibly destructive." One of the Aquilan scientists made a sound that the translator rendered as polite laughter. "Kinetic weapons? How charmingly primitive. You still throw rocks at your enemies?" Jisoo's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Rocks that move at several kilometers per second, yes." The Aquilan waved a limb dismissively. "In space combat, such weapons are useless. Every modern ship has energy shields that disperse solid projectiles effortlessly. We abandoned kinetic weapons over 3,000 years ago. Plasma cannons and photon torpedoes are far superior. I would be happy to send you the basic schematics, though it will take your species decades to understand the principles." After the aliens left that section of the ship, Jisoo found Hyun-woo in his ready room. She looked angry, which was unusual for her. She was normally calm and logical, the kind of person who could solve complex equations while everyone else was panicking. "They're lying," she said without preamble. Hyun-woo raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "Not lying exactly, but they're not telling us everything. They say shields stop kinetic weapons, but they didn't ask about velocity. They didn't ask about mass. They just assumed our railguns are weak because we're primitive." She paced back and forth in the small room. "I want to keep working on the railgun project." In secret, Hyun-woo considered this carefully. The Galactic Council had offered humanity protection, technology, and a place in the greater universe. But they had also made it clear that Earth was the junior partner, the species that needed guidance. Something about that situation made Hyunwoo's instincts scream warnings. "Do it," he said finally, "but keep it quiet. If the council asks, tell them it's just theoretical research." Lieutenant Minho Choi was the third person to join their small conspiracy. He was the Determination's tactical officer, a young man with quick reflexes and an even quicker mind. When Jisoo explained what she wanted to do, he grinned like she had just given him a birthday present. "You want to build a gun so powerful it can punch through alien shields that have stopped every weapon for thousands of years? I'm in. When do we start?" Over the following months, humanity integrated slowly into galactic society. Earth received technology that seemed like magic, medical advances that cured diseases, power generation that could provide clean energy for the entire planet, communication systems that made old Earth technology look like tin cans connected by string. In return, Earth opened trade, allowed alien embassies, and agreed to follow council regulations. But in a secret facility beneath the Determination's main weapons bay, Jisoo, Minho, and a small team of human engineers worked on something else. They took the prototype railgun and made it bigger. They improved the magnetic coils, increased the power supply, and designed projectiles made of dense metals that could survive the incredible forces involved. Hyunwoo watched the progress reports and felt a growing sense of unease. Not about the weapon itself, but about why they were building it. He didn't trust the Galactic Council. They were too smooth, too perfect in their politeness. They treated humanity like children who needed constant supervision. Admiral Suji Kang, commander of Earth's defensive fleet, shared his concerns. She was a veteran of 3 wars on Earth before humanity had unified, and she had never met an alliance that was as selfless as the Council claimed to be. "They're not telling us about the politics," she said during one of their private meetings. "Every species has conflicts, but they present this image of perfect harmony. What are they hiding?" The answer came 6 months after first contact. A new alien species, called the Krelith Dominion, was expanding aggressively near Earth's region of space. The Council assured humanity this was normal, just territorial disputes that would be resolved diplomatically. They told Earth ships to stay in their designated sectors and let the Council handle everything. Hyunwoo didn't like it. He stationed the Determination on the border of human space and watched the Krelith ships gathering in the distance. They were dark and angular, designed to look intimidating, and they were moving closer to the 3 human colonies that had been established on nearby worlds. In her laboratory, Jisoo ran final calculations on the Mark 7 railgun. It was ready. The weapon could accelerate a 200-kilogram tungsten rod to 3% of light speed. She had no idea if it would work against alien shields, but she knew the physics were sound. Kinetic energy equaled 1/2 mass times velocity squared. At 3% of light speed, even a small mass carried devastating energy. Minho prepared the targeting systems, integrating them with the Determination's sensors. He had never fired a weapon like this before. No human had, but he was ready to try. Hyunwoo sat in his command chair and watched the alien ships in the distance. He had a feeling that humanity's time as the junior species was about to end. One way or another, the galaxy was going to learn that humans had been perfecting the art of warfare long before they reached the stars, and sometimes the old ways worked best. The Krelith ships moved like sharks circling prey. From the bridge of the UNSS Determination, Captain Hyunwoo Kim counted them on his tactical display. 27 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They had been gathering at the edge of human territory for 3 weeks now, and every day brought more of them. Ensign Hana Song sat at the communication station, her fingers dancing across her console as she intercepted and translated Krelith transmissions. She was young, barely 25, but she had a gift for languages that extended even to alien syntax patterns. Her face grew paler with each message she decoded. "Captain," she said quietly, "they're not here to negotiate. The transmissions I'm picking up are tactical coordinates. They're planning an attack on our colonies." Hyunwoo felt his jaw tighten. The 3 human colonies, New Seoul, Harmony Station, and Pioneer's Rest, held over 200,000 civilians. Families who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. He had promised to protect them. "Send everything to Admiral Kang," he ordered, "and get me a direct line to the Galactic Council." Admiral Suji Kang appeared on his screen 20 minutes later. She looked tired, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. her uniform crisp despite the late hour at Earth Command. Behind her, Hyunwoo could see the controlled chaos of the command center, where hundreds of officers monitored the growing crisis. "The council is still debating," she said, her voice flat with frustration. "They've been debating for 19 days. Meanwhile, the Krelith fleet grows stronger. They're saying we should trust the diplomatic process." "And if the diplomatic process fails?" Hyunwoo asked. "Then we lose 3 colonies and 200,000 people before the council decides to act." Admiral Kang leaned closer to her camera. "How is the special project?" Hyunwoo glanced around the bridge. His crew was focused on their stations, but he knew they were listening. "Dr. Park says it's ready, but we've never tested it at full power, and we have no idea if it will work against their shields. The council assures me that Krelith shields are impenetrable to kinetic weapons," Admiral Kang said. There was something in her voice, though, that made Hyunwoo pause. She didn't sound like she believed it. "What are my orders, Admiral?" Suji Kang was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Your orders are to conduct reconnaissance along the border. If you happen to encounter hostile forces, you are authorized to defend yourself and any human assets using any means available." Hyunwoo understood perfectly. "Understood, Admiral." Determination out. He found Dr. Jisoo Park in the weapons bay making final adjustments to the Mark 7 railgun. The weapon dominated the entire lower deck of the ship, a massive assembly of magnetic coils, power conduits, and structural bracing. It looked more like an industrial machine than a weapon, all function and no elegance. Engineer Do-hyun Lee worked alongside her, checking stress calculations on his tablet. He was a big man, quiet and methodical, the kind of person who understood exactly how much force every bolt and weld could handle. When he looked up and saw Hyunwoo, his expression was grim. "We're going to fire it, aren't we?" Do-hyun asked. "Maybe," Hyunwoo said. "Are we ready?" Jisoo wiped grease from her hands and nodded. "The weapon is ready. The projectile is loaded. We can draw power from the main reactor, but it will drain our shields and engines for approximately 45 seconds during the firing sequence. We'll be vulnerable. How accurate is it? At ranges under 50,000 kilometers, extremely accurate. Beyond that, even small errors in aim become magnified. But Minho has been running simulations for months. He knows this weapon better than anyone." Hyunwoo looked at the massive machine, humanity's hope, built in secret based on principles that the galaxy had abandoned thousands of years ago. "If this doesn't work, we're going to look very foolish." "If this doesn't work, we're going to be dead," Jisoo corrected him. "The Krelith don't take prisoners." Lieutenant Minho Choi was in the tactical center when Hyunwoo gave the order to move the Determination toward the Krelith fleet. The young officer's hands moved across his controls with practiced ease, bringing the railgun's targeting systems online. He had spent months preparing for this moment, running simulation after simulation, but simulations were safe. This was real. "Target acquisition systems are green," Minho reported. "Power relay is stable. Projectile loaded and secured. We can fire on your command, Captain." "Not yet," Hyunwoo said. "First, we need to make sure everyone is watching." The Determination moved slowly toward the border, broadcasting its position on all frequencies. Hyunwoo wanted the Galactic Council to see this. He wanted every species in the galaxy to witness what happened next, because if humanity was going to prove something, it needed to be public. The Krelith noticed them immediately. A massive battleship, easily 3 times the size of the Determination, broke formation and moved to intercept. Its hull was covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light, and its weapons ports glowed with a sickly green energy. Hana's hands shook slightly as she received the incoming transmission. "Captain, the Krelith commander is hailing us. Warlord Threshcore, according to the translation. Put him on screen." The alien that appeared was nightmare fuel. Thick armor plates covered a body that seemed to be all muscle and aggression. 4 eyes glowed red above a mouth filled with what could only be described as fangs. When it spoke, the translator rendered its voice as a deep growl. "Human vessel, you are small and weak. My flagship has shields that can withstand the plasma fire of an entire fleet. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. You have 1 hour to retreat. If you remain, I will destroy you and then destroy your colonies. This is the only warning you will receive." The transmission ended. Hyunwoo sat very still in his command chair, his mind racing through options. 1 hour. The Galactic Council was still debating. Admiral Kang had no reinforcements close enough to help. The Determination was alone, facing a ship that outmassed it, outgunned it. and had shields that supposedly made it invulnerable. "Open a channel," Hyunwoo said. "All council frequencies. I want everyone listening." Hana nodded, her fingers flying across her console. "Channel open, Captain. Every council ship in range will receive this." Hyunwoo stood up, straightening his uniform. He thought about the 200,000 civilians in the colonies. He thought about Earth, small and blue and far behind him. He thought about every species in the galaxy that had looked at humanity and seen children playing with toys. "This is Captain Hyunwoo Kim of the United Nations Starship Determination. I am addressing the Galactic Council, the Krelith Dominion, and any species currently monitoring this transmission. For 6 months, humanity has been the junior member of your council. You have given us technology and protection, and we are grateful. But you have also taught us that our weapons are primitive, that our methods are outdated, and that we have much to learn from older, wiser species." He paused, letting his words sink in across the vast distances of space. "Today, we're going to teach you something instead. Humanity has been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We have perfected the art of violence in ways you cannot imagine. While you developed energy shields and plasma weapons, we never stopped improving our oldest, simplest method of warfare. We throw things. We throw them very, very hard. And today, you're going to learn why that matters." In the weapons bay, Jisoo watched her displays as power began flowing from the reactor into the railgun's magnetic coils. The entire ship vibrated with barely contained energy. Minho locked his targeting solution onto the Krelith flagship. The massive ship hung in space, confident in its shields, certain of its invulnerability. His finger hovered over the firing control. Do-hyun monitored the structural integrity readings, watching as the ship's frame groaned under the stress of the power buildup. Everything was holding. Barely. On the bridge, Hyunwoo looked at the countdown timer. 30 seconds until the railgun was ready to fire. The Krelith ship hadn't moved. It didn't need to. Its shields were rated to stop anything. Anything except what humanity had built. "All hands, brace for firing," Hyunwoo announced across the ship's intercom. "Lieutenant Choi, on my mark." The seconds ticked away. Hyunwoo thought about how humanity had always been underestimated throughout history. Too weak, too primitive, too naive. But humanity had always survived by being stubborn, by refusing to give up, by finding solutions that others overlooked. "Mark," he said quietly. Minho pressed the firing control. The universe held its breath. The UNSS Determination shuddered like a living thing in pain. Every light on the bridge flickered as the railgun drew power from every available system. The main reactor screamed at maximum output, feeding electricity into magnetic coils that had never been tested at full power. In the weapons bay, the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. Lieutenant Minho Choi watched his targeting display with absolute focus. The solution was perfect. Distance to target 42,000 kilometers. Projectile velocity at launch 9,000 kilometers per second. Time to impact 4.6 seconds. His entire world had narrowed to these numbers, to this single moment that he had practiced 1,000 times in simulations. The railgun fired. There was no dramatic explosion, no flash of light visible from the bridge. The weapon was silent in the vacuum of space. But inside the ship, everyone felt it, a deep, bone-shaking vibration that lasted less than a second. The 200-kilogram tungsten rod accelerated down the length of the ship's lower deck, pushed by magnetic forces strong enough to tear apart ordinary metal. In less than 1/100th of a second, it reached its maximum velocity and left the barrel. Engineer Do-Yun Lee watched his structural integrity displays with his heart in his throat. Warning lights flashed across his console as the ship's frame absorbed forces it was never designed to handle. A support beam in Section 7 bent slightly. Hull plates in the lower deck showed stress fractures, but everything held together. Barely. On the Krelith flagship, Warlord Threshcore was laughing. His crew had detected the energy buildup on the human ship, and they found it amusing. The small vessel had drained its own shields and engines to fire a single shot, a kinetic projectile of all things. The sensors showed a small piece of metal traveling toward them at what the humans probably thought was impressive speed. "Raise shields to maximum," Threshcore ordered, still amused. "Let them see how useless their primitive weapons are. After this fails, we will destroy them slowly, so they have time to understand their mistake." The Krelith shields activated. They were beautiful in their own way. A shimmering field of energy that surrounded the massive ship like a protective bubble. The technology was ancient and refined, improved over thousands of years by dozens of species. These shields could disperse the energy of plasma weapons, redirect photon torpedoes, and absorb laser fire. They had stopped every weapon that had been fired at them for 3 centuries. The tungsten rod hit the shields at 9,000 kilometers per second. For the first microsecond, nothing seemed wrong. The shields detected the incoming mass and activated their dispersal protocols, designed to spread the kinetic energy across the entire shield surface. This had worked perfectly for thousands of years against missiles and slow-moving projectiles, but this projectile was not slow. At 3% of light speed, the tungsten rod carried kinetic energy equal to several large nuclear weapons. The shields tried to disperse this energy, but there was too much of it arriving too fast in too small an area. The math was simple and brutal. 1/2 times mass times velocity squared. The shields were designed for energy weapons that applied force gradually. This was different. This was 200 kilograms of dense metal with momentum that refused to be stopped. The shields failed. Not gradually, not with warning alarms in time to compensate. They simply collapsed, overloaded beyond their capacity to absorb energy. The failure took less than 1,000th of a second. The rod continued forward. It hit the Krelith flagship's armor plating, which was impressive by galactic standards. 10 meters of reinforced alloy designed to withstand plasma fire and explosive decompression. Against the tungsten rod moving at relativistic velocity, it might as well have been paper. The projectile punched through the outer hull, then through the secondary hull, then through 3 interior bulkheads, then through the main reactor shielding. It traveled completely through the ship in less time than it takes a human heart to beat once, and then the physics caught up. The kinetic energy had to go somewhere. As the rod tore through the ship's structure, it transferred its momentum to everything it touched. Metal vaporized instantly from the friction and heat. Shock waves radiated outward from the impact point, traveling faster than sound through the ship's frame. Structural supports snapped like dry twigs. Bulkheads crumpled. The reactor containment failed. From the outside, the Krelith flagship seemed to pause as if it was holding its breath. Then it came apart. The ship didn't explode in the traditional sense. There was no expanding fireball, no dramatic detonation. Instead, it simply ceased to exist as a coherent structure. The middle section disintegrated into a cloud of debris. The front third tumbled forward, trailing atmosphere and bodies. The rear section broke into 6 large pieces, each piece spinning away at different vectors. But the destruction didn't stop there. Debris from the flagship was now traveling at tremendous velocity, turned into thousands of deadly projectiles by the force of the impact. 3 Krelith escort ships nearby were shredded by metal fragments moving faster than bullets. 4 more were damaged severely, their hulls punctured in dozens of places. 8 others had their shields overloaded by the sheer amount of debris impacting them simultaneously. In less than 10 seconds, 15 Krelith warships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 12 ships of the Krelith fleet broke formation immediately. Their engines flared to maximum power as they retreated, abandoning their attack posture and fleeing at speeds that their crews would later describe as reckless. On the bridge of the Determination, there was absolute silence. Every member of the crew stared at the tactical display, watching the debris cloud expand where the Krelith flagship had been, watching the enemy fleet retreat in complete disarray. None of them had quite believed it would work. Not really. The aliens had been so confident, so certain that their shields were invulnerable. Captain Hyunwoo Kim found his voice first. It came out rough, almost a whisper. Damage report. Do-hyun's voice came through the comm system, shaky but professional. Multiple stress fractures in the lower hull. Support beam 7 needs immediate replacement. Power conduits 3 through 7 are burnt out. The railgun barrel has microfractures throughout its length. But we're intact, Captain. We're still here. Minho turned in his chair, his face pale. Direct hit, Captain. Target destroyed. I have never seen anything like that. The shields just vanished. Hana was receiving transmissions from what seemed like every ship in the galaxy. Her console was flooded with incoming messages, questions, demands for explanation. Captain, the Galactic Council channels are going crazy. Everyone is trying to contact us at once. Ambassador Velthar is demanding to speak with you immediately. Hyunwoo took a deep breath, then another. His hands were shaking slightly, and he gripped the armrests of his command chair to steady them. They had just destroyed the most powerful warship in the Krelith fleet with a single shot. A weapon that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive and useless had punched through shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. "Put the ambassador through," he said. "Let's hear what they have to say now." Ambassador Velthar appeared on the screen, and for the first time since Hyunwoo had met him, the alien looked shaken. His translator device struggled to keep up with his rapid speech. "Captain Kim, what have you done? Our sensors show that you destroyed a Krelith flagship with a kinetic weapon. This is impossible. Shields are designed to stop physical projectiles. The mathematics do not allow for this outcome." "The mathematics are simple," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared. We fired a 200-kilogram projectile at 9,000 kilometers per second. Your shields disperse energy gradually. Our weapon delivers all its energy in one instant, to one point. Your shields were not designed for that." Behind Velthar, Hyunwoo could see other council members arguing frantically. Every species seemed to be talking at once, their translator devices creating a chaos of overlapping voices. Words and phrases jumped out: impossible, primitive weapons. How did they? 3% light speed. Our shields. The calculations. Another voice cut through the noise. This one was calmer, more measured. A different alien species one Hyunwoo didn't recognize. "Captain Kim, this is High Counselor Jen of the Viridian Concordat. You must share this technology immediately. If the Krelith learn to counter kinetic weapons, we need to update our defenses. This changes everything about space warfare, does it?" Hyunwoo asked. "Because 6 months ago you told us our kinetic weapons were useless. You told us we were primitive for still using them. You told us to abandon our methods and learn from you. Now you want our help?" The council chamber fell silent. Velthar's mandibles clicked in what might have been embarrassment. "Captain, we made assumptions based on our own experience. No species has used kinetic weapons effectively for thousands of years. We did not consider that you might have perfected them to this degree." "You didn't consider," Hyunwoo repeated, "that maybe we kept using them because they work." Admiral Suji Kang's face appeared in a smaller window on Hyunwoo's screen. She was smiling, and it was the first genuine smile he had seen from her in months. Behind her, the Earth Command Center had erupted in celebration. "Captain Kim, stand by." 3 years had passed since the day humanity fired its first railgun in combat. The galaxy looked very different now, and so did the space around Earth. Where once there had been a single ship, the UNSS Determination, now a fleet of 12 human warships patrolled the borders of human territory. Each one carried weapons that the galaxy had once dismissed as primitive. Commodore Hyunwoo Kim stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the UNSS Defiance, and watched through the view screen as an Aquilon battleship performed combat drills nearby. The alien ship had been retrofitted with human technology, its sleek lines now broken by the angular shapes of railgun turrets. It looked strange, like someone had bolted industrial equipment onto a work of art. But it was effective, and that was all that mattered. The Aquilon captain, Sharvek, appeared on the communication screen. His translator device had been upgraded significantly in the past 3 years, and now it handled technical terms without confusion. "Commodore Kim, we have completed the firing exercise. Our crews report 92% accuracy at 50,000 kilometers. Your trainers have taught us well." Hyunwoo smiled. "You learned quickly, Captain. Your species always does. How do your crews feel about using kinetic weapons?" Sharvek's mandibles moved in what humans had learned was the Aquilon equivalent of a thoughtful expression. At first they felt it was beneath them, like we were moving backward in time. But after seeing the effectiveness in combat simulations, they have embraced the technology. "We now understand what your people knew all along. Simplicity has its own elegance." After the transmission ended, Lieutenant Minho Choi, now promoted to commander, approached Hyunwoo with a data tablet. Minho had aged well in 3 years. He was more confident now, comfortable with his role as one of humanity's premier weapons instructors. He spent most of his time teaching alien officers the principles of kinetic warfare, something that still amused him. "Sir, the latest reports from the Joint Training Academy are in. We have students from 23 different species now. Most of them are performing well, though the Viridians still struggle with the concept of leading a target. They are too used to point-and-shoot energy weapons." Hyunwoo took the tablet and reviewed the data. The Galactic Institute for Kinetic Applications had been Dr. Jisoo Park's idea, and it had grown far beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a small training program on Earth had become a full academy with campuses on 5 different worlds. Alien scientists and military officers came to learn from humans, to understand principles that their species had forgotten or never fully explored. Dr. Jisoo herself was on Earth at the moment, overseeing the development of the Mark the-themed railgun system. Hyunwoo had received her last message 2 days ago and she had sounded excited. The new system could fire multiple projectiles in rapid sequence, something that the aliens had insisted was impossible until she had proven otherwise. She had a talent for making the impossible routine. Engineer Do-hyun Lee had become something of a legend in galactic engineering circles. His designs for reinforced ship structures that could survive railgun recoil were now standard across 12 species fleets. He had retired from active military service last year and now ran a private consulting firm, teaching alien engineers the principles of structural engineering that Earth had learned through centuries of trial and error. Hyunwoo heard he was very wealthy now, though Do-hyun still wore the same simple clothes and drove the same old transport vehicle he had always used. The political changes had been just as dramatic as the technological ones. The Galactic Council had voted to grant Earth full membership status 3 days after the emergency session. The vote had not been unanimous, but it had been decisive. 41 species in favor, 6 opposed. Since then, humanity had proven to be an active and engaged council member, contributing ideas and solutions that other species had not considered. The Council of Five, the primary peacekeeping organization in the galaxy, had been restructured to include humanity. Admiral Suji Kang now sat on the council alongside representatives from the Aquilan Empire, the Viridian Concordat, the Talharn Federation, and the Mektor Collective. She had become one of the most respected military minds in the galaxy, not because she was brilliant at strategy, though she was, but because she understood something the others had forgotten. She understood that warfare was not about having the most advanced technology. It was about using what you had in ways your enemy did not expect. Ensign Hanasong, now Commander Hanasong, worked at Earth's embassy on the council station. She had discovered that her gift for languages extended beyond simple translation. She understood how different species thought, how they communicated not just words but concepts. She had been instrumental in creating new translation protocols that could handle military and technical terms that had previously caused confusion. The phrase kinetic energy now translated properly in 47 languages. Thanks to her work, Hyunwoo's communicator chimed, and he saw it was a priority message from Admiral Kang. He excused himself to his ready room and opened the secure channel. Suji appeared on his screen and she looked pleased about something. "Commodore, I have news. The Krelith Dominion has formally requested to join the Galactic Council as a junior member. They have agreed to all terms, including limits on their military expansion and mandatory railgun defense systems on all their ships." Hyunwoo raised his eyebrows. "The Krelith? The same species that threatened to destroy our colonies 3 years ago?" "The same. Apparently, losing their flagship and 15 other ships in 10 seconds taught them humility. Their new leadership is much more reasonable. They are also requesting human military advisors to help modernize their fleet. Do we trust them?" Suji shrugged. "Trust is earned over time, but having them inside the council means we can watch them closely, and if they step out of line, we now have 12 ships that can repeat what the determination did. They know this. Everyone knows this." After the call ended, Hyunwoo sat in his ready room for a long time, thinking about how much had changed. 3 years ago, humanity had been the junior member of the council, treated like children who needed guidance. Now alien species came to Earth to learn. Human weapons had revolutionized galactic warfare. Human engineers taught aliens how to build ships that could survive kinetic combat. Human officers commanded joint task forces with alien crews. The word primitive had disappeared from diplomatic communications. In its place were terms like innovative and practical and effective. Some species still looked down on kinetic weapons as inelegant, but none of them questioned their effectiveness anymore. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson, and it had learned it well. But what pleased Hyunwoo most was not the respect, though that was nice. It was the understanding. The galaxy finally understood that there was more than one way to solve a problem, that old solutions could still work in new situations. that sometimes the best answer was the simplest answer. He walked to the viewport in his ready room and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the UNSS Determination sat in the Smithsonian Space Museum. Its Mark 7 railgun still pointed at the stars as a reminder of the day everything changed. Hyunwoo had visited it last month during leave, and he had been surprised by how small it looked now. This ship that had once been humanity's pride now seemed tiny compared to the newer vessels in Earth's fleet, but it had been enough. One ship, one crew, one shot. That was all it had taken to change the galaxy's mind about humanity. A historical museum on Earth had created an entire wing dedicated to kinetic weapons throughout human history. It started with ancient slings and catapults, moved through cannons and rifles, continued to artillery and tank guns, and ended with the railgun. The exhibit was called 10,000 Years of Throwing Rocks, and it was the most visited museum in the solar system. Alien tourists came by the thousands to see how humanity had perfected this one simple principle over centuries of constant refinement at the educational materials explained it in simple terms that even children could understand. Humans had been throwing things at each other since before recorded history. Rocks at first, then spears, then arrows, then bullets. Each generation made the projectiles faster and more accurate. When humans reached space, they had simply scaled up the same principle. A railgun was just a really, really good way of throwing a rock. Minho entered the ready room without knocking, something he only did when they were alone. "Sir, we have a request from the Academy. They want you to give the graduation speech for this year's class. 200 officers from 15 species, all trained in kinetic warfare principles. They want to hear from the man who fired the first shot." Hyunwoo thought about what he would say to those young officers. What lesson could he teach them that they had not already learned in their training? Then he remembered his own words from 3 years ago, spoken in the Galactic Council chamber. "Tell them I will do it," he said, "and tell them I know exactly what I want to say." 2 weeks later, Hyunwoo stood before the graduating class at the Galactic Institute for Kinetic Applications. The auditorium was filled with aliens of every size and shape, all wearing military uniforms from their respective species. The emergency session of the Galactic Council took place 3 days after the destruction of the Krellith flagship. Representatives from all 47 member species gathered in the Great Chamber, a massive space station that orbited a neutral star. For the first time in recorded history, the chamber was completely silent as the session began. Captain Hyunwoo Kim stood in the center of the chamber, facing a semicircle of alien dignitaries. He wore his dress uniform, every button polished, every crease perfect. Behind him stood Dr. Jisoo Park, Lieutenant Minho Choi, and Engineer Do-hyun Lee. The 4 humans looked small compared to the assembled aliens, but nobody in the chamber was looking at them as inferior anymore. Ambassador Velthar spoke first, his translator device working overtime to keep his voice steady. "Captain Kim, this council demands a full explanation. You destroyed a Krellith warship using a weapon that should not have been effective. Our best scientists have reviewed the sensor data, and they cannot explain how you penetrated shields that have protected ships for 3,000 years. Some members believe you used a hidden energy weapon. Others think you have discovered a new form of physics. We must know the truth." Hyunwoo glanced at Jisoo, who stepped forward with a portable display device. She had spent the last 3 days preparing this presentation, and she had warned Hyunwoo that it might not go well. The problem was not the science itself, but the words used to describe it. "Honored council members," Jisoo began, "I am Dr. Jisoo Park, Chief Weapons Scientist of Earth. I will explain exactly what we did and why it worked. But I must warn you that some of the concepts may be difficult to translate into your languages, because you have not used these principles in warfare for so long that you have forgotten them." She activated her display, showing a simple diagram of the railgun. "This weapon uses electromagnetic acceleration to propel a dense metal projectile at extremely high velocity. We call this a kinetic weapon, because it relies on kinetic energy for its destructive power." The translator devices around the chamber struggled with the phrase, kinetic energy. Some rendered it as motion force, others as velocity power. A few species heard only confused static. Jisoo noticed this and frowned. "Kinetic energy is the energy an object possesses because it is moving," she explained slowly. "The formula is simple. Energy equals 1/2 times mass times velocity squared. This is fundamental physics that applies everywhere in the universe. A Viridian counselor raised one of its 3 arms. We understand the mathematics, Dr. Park, but we do not understand how this matters. All objects have motion. Missiles have motion. Plasma has motion. Why is your motion special? Jisoo highlighted the velocity figure on her display. Because of the velocity squared component of the equation. Our projectile traveled at 9,000 kilometers per second. That is 3% of the speed of light. When you square that velocity, the energy becomes enormous. Another counselor, this one from a species that looked like a floating jellyfish, pulsed with confused colors. But our shields disperse energy. They are designed specifically to handle high-energy impacts. We have tested them against every weapon type. You tested them against energy weapons, Jisoo corrected. Weapons that apply their force gradually, over milliseconds or even seconds. Our weapon is different. It delivers all its energy instantly to a single point through physical contact. Your shields are designed to spread energy across their entire surface. But our projectile has mass and momentum. It cannot be dispersed. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Multiple translator devices created a cacophony of overlapping voices. Hyunwoo heard phrases like momentum transfer being translated as motion giving and impact lending and velocity sharing. Each species seemed to have a different interpretation of concepts that humanity took for granted. High Counselor Zhen, the Viridian who had spoken earlier, held up a hand for silence. Dr. Park, I believe I understand your mathematics, but I still do not comprehend why your shields would be more effective than energy weapons. Energy is efficient. Matter is wasteful. You must accelerate the entire mass of the projectile, which requires enormous power. That is correct. Jisoo agreed. Our railgun requires the full output of our ship's reactor for several seconds. It drains our shields and engines. We are vulnerable during and after firing, but the trade-off is worth it, because the projectile itself becomes the weapon. It needs no warhead, no explosive, no guidance system. The velocity alone is enough to destroy anything it hits. An Aquiland scientist stood up, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Impossible. We abandoned kinetic weapons precisely because shields made them obsolete. A slow-moving missile can be intercepted. A fast-moving projectile should be deflected by shields. This is known. Known and wrong, Jisoo said flatly. Your shields can deflect projectiles moving at low speeds, yes. But we are not talking about low speeds. At 3% of light speed, mass behaves differently. The projectile has so much momentum that it cannot be redirected. It punches through shields like they are not there. Minho stepped forward, adding his own expertise. I am Lieutenant Minho Choi, Tactical Officer. I have studied your shield technology extensively. Your shields work by creating an energy field that pushes against incoming objects or disperses incoming energy. But pushing requires time. At the velocities we achieve, there is no time. The projectile contacts the shield and passes through before the shield can react. More confused chatter, more translator errors. Hyunwoo noticed that several species were arguing among themselves, their scientists clearly disagreeing about whether any of this made sense. One species seemed to think humanity had violated the laws of physics. Another believed the humans were lying and had secretly used some form of unknown energy weapon. Do-hyun spoke up, his deep voice cutting through the noise. I am Engineer Do-hyun Lee. I designed the structural systems that allow our ship to survive firing this weapon. If you do not believe the science, you can believe the engineering. Our ship nearly tore itself apart from the forces involved. The recoil alone would destroy a vessel that was not specifically reinforced. This is not a hidden energy weapon. It is exactly what we say it is. A very dense object thrown very hard. Velthar looked as close to frustrated as Hyunwoo had ever seen an Aquilan look. But why? Why perfect such a crude method when energy weapons are so much more sophisticated? Hyunwoo decided it was time to speak. He stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Because it works. That is the only reason that matters. You are asking why humanity continued to develop kinetic weapons while the rest of the galaxy moved on to energy weapons. The answer is simple. We never stopped fighting each other. The chamber went silent again. But this time it was a different kind of silence. Uncomfortable. Uncertain. Humanity has been at war for our entire history. Hyunwoo continued. We have fought with rocks and sticks, with swords and spears, with bullets and bombs, with missiles and lasers. We have never stopped improving our ability to destroy each other. While you were at peace, protected by your council and your ancient treaties, We were perfecting the art of violence. We took the oldest weapon in history, throwing a rock, and we scaled it up until it could destroy starships. He gestured to the display showing the destroyed Krellith flagship. You say kinetic weapons are primitive. You are right. They are primitive. They are based on principles that are thousands of years old. But primitive does not mean ineffective. A sharpened stick is primitive, but it will still kill you. A rock is primitive, but if I throw it hard enough, it will go through your shields, your armor, and your hull. Counselor Zhen spoke quietly. You are saying that your warfare never stopped, that you continued to fight even as you reached the stars. Yes, Yunwu said. Earth unified only 50 years ago. Before that, we were divided into nearly 200 nations and we fought constantly. We learned every possible way to hurt each other. And one thing we learned very well is that kinetic weapons work. They work against armor. They work against fortifications. They work against shields if you make them fast enough. We did not keep using them because we were too primitive to understand energy weapons. We kept using them because they are effective. Jisoo pulled up another display, this one showing human military history. Catapults throwing stones at castle walls, cannons firing iron balls through wooden ships, artillery shells destroying bunkers, tank rounds penetrating armor, railguns destroying orbital targets. We have been scaling up kinetic weapons for 3,000 years, she said. Each generation faster and more powerful than the last. When we reached space, we simply continued the process. You abandoned this path because you found a better one. We never stopped walking it. A small alien near the back of the chamber, from a species Hunwu did not recognize, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. What will you do now? Now that you have shown us this weapon that defeats our defenses? Hyunwoo looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or equivalent organs of as many counselors as he could. That depends on you. Earth has been a junior member of this council for 6 months. You have treated us like children who need to be educated and protected, but we just proved that we can protect ourselves.